This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Let's welcome everybody to the show today. We'd like to start with Terry Batcher.
Hiya, kids. Hiya, hiya.
Hiya, hiya. Nolan Del Campo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. And Harriet Suchet by phone.
Yes, good morning. This is
Good morning. Oh, I'm going to start the morning great because yesterday, out of the blue, I had a friend that I've known for about 25 years show up. I paid him to do some yard work and clean gutters. We're getting ready for the rain to come in. And he wins tickets. Well, his friend won tickets, which he then handed down to us for a cover band for Led Zeppelin last night. I have to tell you that Zeppelin USA is one of the best cover bands I think I've ever seen. And they played out at Thunder Valley. So, of course, on the way out the door, you've got to drop a couple nickels, right? Just to have some fun. I actually won $1,300 before I walked out the door.
Yeah,
I'm like,
start.
You're right. After the last couple weeks, I promise you that there could not have been a better night coming for me, and the universe will provide.
Yeah, right. Congratulations. Let's go. I've been on a Led Zeppelin kick lately, too.
Oh, man, the music was just
my
absolutely
God. No
amazing.
Wait, the drummer was otherworldly. That guy was.
Well, this is a cover band, so we didn't see Led Zeppelin. So yeah. Anyways, we are back on the Oakland County Child Killer, and of course, I got a bit of information from my good friend. I'm going to say my good friend, Tony. Even though we've not met in person, he randomly sends me bits of information and things to kind of clear up questions that I've had. I thought one was really interesting because he stated that T-O-T, it must have been something that I read inside of the documents that you provided me, Terry.
Turned over to.
Yes, is a police slang term that stands for turned over to another agency. So we're seeing a lot of turnovers, obviously. And that kind of brought up some of your solves, Harriet, where you had said taught Harmon. Could it be turned over to Harmon? Could it be, you know what I'm saying? Like that whole taught thing just kind of bling-blinged in my mind.
Yeah, you're going. Yeah, it's a way to dig deeper into the rabbit hole.
Right. Now, and of course, he also indicated that the SFPD, so we talked about SFPD last week being in those reports. He did indicate that that was an acronym for Southfield Police Department. So evidently there's evidently one more SFPD out there that we know about. But he did send me a couple of articles, one of them from the Detroit News. The second one that he sent me, I've actually decided I'm not going to read about today, but it does implicate a well-known pedophilia crime that was going on in that area off of a island in the middle of Lake Michigan between both Wisconsin and Michigan, which would even be a closer drive for Jack if he was the person that was getting rid of these bodies or responsible for killing and disposing of these children. And I thought that was interesting. So
Fox Island,
yes.
Right. It's real close though to the western shore, or eastern shore of Lake Michigan. So you don't want to be in the middle or anything.
No. It's up at the top, I think.
Oh, they had to fly to it. I know that. They had to fly to it.
Right.
Oh, you're probably right.
Another Epstein thing here going on.
Something else. Sorry.
All right. Well, that may explain the holding of these kids for X amount of time. So Anyways, from the Detroit News, he did give me this one article, which I thought was interesting. It's pretty quick. I'm going to read. It says, fragmentation of police agencies made a vivid horror story in the investigation of the child murders in Oakland County. Sheriff Johannes F. Spreen has charged, I want to talk to you about the problems we encountered, the shortcomings of our solutions, and how we should plan for the future occurrences, he told the conference. I must tell you from the outset that the events will sadden you as parents and infuriate you as professional police officers. Spreen's comments about Mark Stebbins' case. Although the state police maintain 2 relatively close crime labs and the Oakland County Sheriff's Department also has an excellent crime lab available, none were called to process the scene. By the time the investigator from Oakland County Medical Examiner's Office had arrived, the body had been removed to the Southfield Police Department. When the body finally arrived at the morgue, it was devoid of all clothes. No one really knows what might have been found at the scene had proper crime scene procedures been followed and a crime lab present. The Troy police failed to call a crime lab to process the scene where the body of Jill Robinson was found. Noting the similarities in the 2 cases, it was suggested that a coordinated effort involving the state police, Sheriff's Department, and local authorities involved be implemented in an attempt to solve the crimes, Spreen said. The suggestion was submitted to the local agencies by the state police, and the offer was declined. Berkeley police refused to offer the offer of assistance of the state police and Sheriff's Department after the disappearance of 10-year-old Christine Miley of Berkeley, and only after her body was found in Franklin did the Franklin chief turn the investigation over to the state police, Spreen said. The news reported that according to Spreen, the afternoon, 30 investigators committed themselves to find the murder of Christine Miley, and the Oakland County Task Force was implemented. The work of the task force was hampered from the start by many problems. It was discovered that one jurisdiction charged with the investigation had virtually no report, and in another jurisdiction, evidence had been misplaced and mishandled. The investigative team was forced to investigate one of the slayings from the very beginning. Another agency was reluctant to submit their report to the task force. Discussing the murder of Tim King, Spreen criticized the task force for allowing 300 Tri-County investigators to flood the area where the body was dropped off. The Detroit Free Press quoted Spreen as saying, during the King homicide, March 1977, numerous bits of information were lost forever due to inadequate reporting procedures and unfamiliarity with the case. Wow.
I'm glad you brought this up because I had forgotten. I had read this a few years ago already.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's extremely interesting to note that we have the crossing of jurisdictions, just like we did in the Zodiac case. So we've got, in many of these cases, actually, they're picked up in one place, they're dropped off in another, and then who's going to fight over who has the actual investigative protocol or the right to investigate a particular case.
If you do the deep dive, like I've done on reading some of the documents, it'll piss you off because all they gave her was tons of redundant documents that were basically worthless. And
redacted, I'm sure, to high heaven. So there's not really much you can do.
Yeah, some redaction, but there's a lot of things missing. But the biggest thing that pisses me off, I can't find it. The reports clearly said that Stebbins had sperm in his throat. Okay,
we can't find that anywhere else. I think we're going to get to that, Terry. I think you're a little bit ahead of me, but I think that I have that in the presentation now. So actually, that is my next first slide. So you had indicated that, and this is where we were talking before, where I didn't know who the O, the K, and the D was on this question and exam. This was actually the interview with Dr. Olson, and you had that notated. I just didn't have that in front of me the first time when we talked about it. And you did actually notate underneath there that they found sperm in the throat, and that your question is where's the additional evidence about that?
Right, and that's a cop's saying that. That K is for one of the officials that was there. But I think you can detect if you read all this stuff like I have. There were some good cops, and there were some very bad cops, and there were some very bad actors involved in the whole work. So,
and we'll talk about, some of these statements that were made. Like one of them said there was a lot of blood, though. There was a lot of bleeding. Because as I go through some of your other documents, it indicates that there wasn't a lot of blood.
Right, that was downplayed. That was downplayed from that point or up until that point of this, because this is a later document. So go ahead.
Well, and this is your email to me that you said, BTW, whatever happened to the sperm evidence in Mark Stebbins' murder case?
Right.
It was stated as being a fact, but it's not listed in the evidence list. I don't know that do you want to read the rest of this? Can you read it?
The only really I can recall most of it. I was talking about the flowery blanket, which we're going to get to. That was at the Bush case, and get that later. I can give you a quick summary of this. The big thing,
actually, that's what I'm gonna read in the end, is so that everybody understands that Chris Bush was thoroughly investigated for these murders, and he was actually found innocent. There was other than this picture of who they presume to be Mark Stebbins, he was actually cleared of these crimes, and that's based on a 2023 report as of today.
Yeah, didn't have
or as of 2023.
But the blue paint on the left boot and the blue paint on the bicycle was part of my point on this document. So I don't really need to read that. People can screenshot this if they want to read it over. But I thought that Harriet's point about Dick, Jack, and King on that document, the other one we talked about, that's why I wrote about that. I still think that that's huge. I think that's big. So.
Well, and I found a lot of correlation to blue in these murders. That they're either wearing blue jackets, blue sweaters, blue seemed to be a common theme of colors that were coming in. So when I hear something like blue paint, that doesn't shock me. It actually kind of just fits right in.
Well, I think left and blue, left boot being a reference to the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
That's
too. There's so much needed for that word blue. That's why I just wanted to interject real quick. Sometimes you're reading what somebody says is the evidence, and then it just anagrams out to something else, and then you find out that they weren't really wearing blue shoes. But it's just part of, oh my God, this amazing world of Jack and his crew and code. Anyways, keep building.
This body was actually covered in a blue blanket. Now, where the blue blanket came from is unknown. And of course, we have the crime lab that's upset that blanket wasn't provided, because it would have had a lot of forensic evidence on it. But that's not to say that somebody at the crime scene didn't actually cover that body after the fact. If nobody's making adequate reports and finding out what's really going on, that blanket could have came at a later time, and any trace evidence could have been picked up on the ground that was surrounding that body to begin with. And when you lift that blanket up to remove that body, you've now just kind of fluttered all that trace evidence all over the body.
It's Hollywood fiction is what it is. No investigator worth their salt even covers up those bodies whatsoever at a crime scene.
Well, you got to remember, these people are not used to this. They're not used to what's going on, evidently. I mean, based on what we just listened to, they didn't have a protocol.
Right. Look at Stebbins' body right there.
Well, but just
cover that up.
Well, that's where the blue blanket is I'm talking about. Evidently, there was a blue blanket on him, and that blue blanket did not make it into the crime lab, and she was upset about it. Needless to say, it shows that the body was discovered at 11:40 a.m., and that was based on eyewitness reports who had made a walk through at approximately 9:30. There was no body, and then they estimated a time sometime after 9:30, but obviously before the crime or the police were on the scene. It does say that the, let's see, parking lot and not lead something blue, which appeared to be a jacket and blue jeans. So now we've got a blue jacket and blue jeans. And then Mark's then called, so Mark is the actual person. I can't really read his last name, and I'm sure I would slaughter it if I tried to say it. It was an actual man named Mark that found the body of Mark Stebbins, and he called the police. What's that?
Nothing. I was just being funny.
But I didn't hear it. I want to laugh too. What's that?
Looked like it said Burfendoer.
Yeah, I couldn't make it out. It was
3 or 4 syllables in that name, German. But that was a German community. It was, that whole.
All right, so
lividity. You know what that means. So.
Yes, that is where the blood settles after somebody dies, and it usually gives you an idea of how their body was positioned, whether or not they were moved, whether or not they died in one position and then was, set upright. As you'd indicated, you thought that maybe he had been riding in the car with this individual to be dumped off, and he was positioned in a sitting up position, and it shows that the lividity was on the left and bottom of the body.
Well, I think that, I'm going to jump in the gun, I know, but I really think the Stebbins murder was a hit at Robert Stebbins, as Harriet pointed out herself. I really do. It makes
definitely
Makes perfect sense.
Well, it shows that the neck showed signs of rope burn, as did the wrist. So we've got tying of the individual. The ankles showed evidence of having been tied or handcuffed, probably the latter from the appearance of the marks. So they definitely are restraining these children.
Really poorly.
Another thing that you brought up was the murder of 12-year-old Mark Stebbins, a 4-month-old murder. His body was found in the rear of Southfield office building parking lot on February 19th. Victim of a vicious sexual assault, died from asphyxiation due to smothering, and he had been tied up for this is a really bad copy.
That's a press release.
Unidentified amount of time, I think it says. Anyways, so this was a news release, yes, from the city of Southfield. And then the next one is on the secret witness program. So you had a little bit to say about that. Go ahead and tell us.
Well, secret witness is the thing that Harriet's has recently solved, and she was saying that she was able to do it via the header that was on another document about where the secret witness program was started at the news agency. So, and let's see what I put on here. Well, we get to the actual study of the structure, the surface of the document. Z's are all over the thing. Those ends are all tilted like a little.
No. I'm not looking at. We're just trying to discuss what your thought is based on the secret witness program on this.
Well, it was what I wrote on the left here. Detroit News Secret Service Witness Program will provide the key evidence that shows that John Walker Torrance Jr., aka Zodiac Jack, penned the very cryptic secret witness document. It also proves that he was the prime operative in the OCCK murders, and at the time that he abducted and murdered Jill Robinson, although I might have to retract that, that same document shows that the main target is Timothy King, because the part of the string of documents that started on August 8th of 1969 with "This is the Zodiac Speak King," capital K-I-N-G documents, which there are many of. And there's a 78 document too, which we'll see eventually.
Right. Well, and I want to note that in that article that I'll be reading at the end is kind of a summary for this, does indicate that the original murders that we looked at, because I thought there were 7 murders involved and there was a potential for them all to be connected. They actually were able to identify suspects through DNA, I believe, on 2 of those victims. So I'll be correcting that in the presentation and obviously not attributing those. We also have to keep in mind that I've always thought that there was a potential for Jack being the author in these cases, which would confuse the people involved. You know what I'm saying? Right. So if one person is molesting them and leaving behind, trace evidence of sperm or semen or saliva or anything like that, it's not going to match the person's fingerprints who killed them, and it's not going to match the handwriting of the person who's attempting to take credit for the crime. So we've got like this multi-person evidence pile, and when it all doesn't match up to one person, it's very hard to close a case on any one individual.
Right.
So this next one was
I just wanted to say real quick, I see from my view, there were people like Ed Bell, who's involved with a whole bunch of pedophile crap, and John Walsh, and stuff.
Yes.
They took advantage of this situation and said, well, since they're not going to solve the main targets, they're not going to solve the others either, which is a sick situation.
Sure.
Right.
I'm really anxious to discuss Ed Bell. That's an interesting subject, but we'll do that when we get to that.
Here is one witness that you would notate. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that August 8th, 1969 date was "This is Zodiac Speaking" letter.
Yes.
The debut of the Zodiac.
It may just be a coincidence, but the 9th and 10th of 69 were the dates of the Tate LaBianca murders in LA.
Exactly.
And it's no coincidence now, is it? We know that. MK Ultra thing is the MK Ultra thing is a for real thing, and I think you're seeing all kinds of MK Ultra victims all over the place doing murders, along with the Manson family and Ed Bell, which is what I want to talk about. Yeah. And a lot of people, they're brainwashed to be killers. That's what Ed Bell complained about. Was he said that they programmed him to be a flasher, and the killer.
Exactly.
Well, look at Patty
continue.
Hearst. You know, she was
Right,
purportedly, I would call her an MK Ultra
brainwashed.
victim if she was a victim at all, but she supposedly completely brainwashed and robs a bank and then gets pardoned at a later date. Thank goodness for Daddy Hearst and all that money.
The head of the SLA
She's
was
the trigger.
participating in
She's
brainwashing
the trigger to
experiments.
Jack.
Okay, hold on, Harriet.
Sorry.
Let Nolan finish. Go ahead.
Sin Q, the head of the SLA that kidnapped Patty Hearst,
Mm-hmm.
he was involved in brainwashing experiments while he was in prison at Vacaville and at another prison.
Ah, so he knew, and that's where they were doing it, in prisons, in psychiatric facilities, in the military, in colleges, socialites. The list is extremely long of the people they were giving these drugs to, and getting them to behave, perform, or get information from others while they were in the process of doing it.
Yeah,
What were you saying, Harriet?
Well, my quick contention is, because we've already covered the 1974 stuff, is that Patty Hearst was in the Hearst family's mother's womb in 1953 during the height of where they're going to plan to do all these things MK Ultra wise. And I think that because she was born, and then it's now 20 years later, those events are Jack's trigger. They're not supposed to be remembering a lot of what he keeps on remembering. So
I see
that's
what you're saying.
I'm saying,
and that's why he keeps calling for the remedy. Right.
Manchurian.
All right, so
yeah, because he's remembering.
And he shouldn't be. And that's what made him
that's
what I think made them want to then hunt him down, and him saying, I know more than you know. If you mess with me, you're going to find my information all over in different storage lockers across California. So we do have an eyewitness. This document that you provided, Terry B, is in regards to an individual. It said subject had a good view of the area under question. They have a large picture window with a chair facing towards 10 Mile. I think they said subject also observed a green, smaller vehicle, possible Pontiac or Buick, parked in the Fairfax office plaza near the northeast side of the building. Vehicle exited onto 10 Mile Road approximately 9:30 to 10 a.m. So we are getting different eyewitnesses coming forward about vehicles movement in this particular case of Mark Stebbins.
Right.
This one actually says there's no witnesses when the body was dropped off. So how do we have witnesses that are seeing cars come in and seeing cars go out, but there's no witnesses again? So it's almost like
that's what I mean by good cops and bad cops. It's not a true statement. It's just, I think that's part of a press release again, and it's a misinformation. It's not true. But except on the other hand, blue paint on the right boot.
Sorry, we've already covered that. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, but what I noticed in this that you were saying, Harriet, hold on. What I did notice that you had in this was, it shows on number 8, no blood in hair or clothes from above injury, indicating clothes and hair had been washed. So how does it go from bleeding heavily, lots of blood, to nothing on the? I mean, the information is so wishy-washy and all over the place.
Very good point. That's why I say, be prepared to be pissed off when you read this stuff.
I'm confused, and I've only read a couple. I can't imagine if you had to read all this stuff as you did.
It's garbage. It's maddening.
I know that this image right here is a little bit blurry, but this is one of the images that was found on the 110 film that was in Jack's belongings, and it was an image. Wow. It was an image of a little boy that Dennis does not recognize. He does not recognize it to be family. He does not recognize it to be
Stebbins for sure. Look at that.
I don't know. I'm just saying, when I look at it, I'm kind of like, wow, I'm getting goosebumps. It's a little bit eerie about the closeness of this image. And when I saw Stebbins' picture, I thought to myself, I recall this image that Dennis kept talking about, and I don't have it here. I got to go search and find it. And hopefully I still have it, but it actually looked like in one of the images, this boy had some blood dripping down from his head. And that's what Dennis believed it was. So that would coincide with a head injury and bleeding from the head that we've talked about in the evidence in regards to this particular murder. So
the blood, but they said he was a tough little kid and would have fought.
Right. Right.
You
Well,
know,
but this is just it was an eerie image. When I saw it, I was thinking I mean, it even looks better actually on my podcast here than it does blown up in front of me right now, because you kind of lose some of the detail. But when you look at this one down here, I'm thinking like, wow, this
yeah,
child.
the nose, the shape of his mouth, the shape of his eyes, his hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who else would it be? Who else would it be?
I don't know. I'm not going to claim
Why?
it is. I'm just
Why
saying
has
that
he
it was an
got that in
eerie.
his- Who does
Why does
that?
he have it? And
Yeah,
this
why
is
does
on
he
the
have
roll of film with the images of what we believe is the Black Dahlia. There's some other eerie and strange images that are very, very creepy, which I will show at some point in time. Images that just don't make any sense for somebody who's just taking pictures of friends and family or otherwise. Almost again as if it was a snapshot of a picture. So he had this picture, it was produced. He then took a picture of it with the 110 film, just as we see with the Black Dahlia, or the images we believe are from the Black Dahlia murder, because you can see the edges of the original photograph that he captured on that 110 film in order to conceal it. Everybody has to remember that 110 film was probably just coming out at this time, but certainly wasn't around in 1949. So to have yourself raided by the police looking for evidence, they're not going to take 110 film because it wasn't available in 1947 when Black Dahlia was alive.
Yeah, so that's for a copy of a copy.
Right. So back onto Jack right now. We know that on February 27th, so this is after the murder of Mark Stebbins. And again, I believe that he is out in that area scoping and scouting for the new house, and then he is coming back, and then Dennis indicates that they're going to move. So it says that Jack is seen by Dr. Lavorna for a work comp-related injury at Cameron Park Shell, and he's including Tahoe City Linen. And it says he's getting from the law offices of Eugene C. Treaster. Please be patient. We want to cross-examine Dr. Lavorna. Enclosed is a copy of his report. And in his report, let's see, impression, minor. So he's talking about some of his medical conditions at this point. This was just, I think, a brief synopsis. So it was more or less a cover page. And he's saying that there's no destructive or traumatic lesions that are seen on his spine impressions. Researching this stuff, the doctor claims that Jack is far more active than he actually is, leading work comp to believe that via calluses and scars all over Jack's hands and fresh wounds, that he is actively doing more than he claims that he's capable of doing, because he's telling everybody he's in bed and he's disabled and he can't do anything in these reports.
Doesn't it also kind of dawn on you that Jack was wanted to place himself back in California shortly after that murder too?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of things are too specifically, and even some murders. So when he steps back into California, we see another murder that could be attributed to the Zodiac, making his presence still well known here as if he hadn't tiptoed out somewhere else. On March 15th of 1976, Eugene C. Treaster files a work comp suit using Jack's address in North Highlands for mailing of the copies of the documents that are filed. So Jack is still using the California address in 1976 at this particular point in time. The attorney declares that Jack was incarcerated during a portion of the claim for the deer poaching incident in March 17th of 1974 and incapacitated for a period due to the motorcycle accident. So he's basically making statements that Jack is busy and out there doing some other things that we are now, being able to see he's not as bedridden as he can claim to be. He also declares that. What's that?
I doubt he was in any motorcycle accident too.
Well, I think that we do have a police report that indicates when Danny Reynolds attempted to take back the motorcycle because it was in his mother's name, that there was damage to the motorcycle. In fact, I don't know how Danny stole it unless he trailered it and pulled it away, because the damage to it sounded like it had flat tires, it had wrecked sides, it had some issues. So there may be some truth to that. He declares that Jack is without funds and needs money pending the move to Minnesota. So on March 15th, 1976, Jack's attorney again appeals the work comp case. So obviously, Jack has now lost the work comp case. He is again moneyless. And we see a new filing that is occurring on March 15th of 1976. Let's see. The next set of San Francisco murders can be a direct reaction to the denial of his work comp claim. It seems to me that there always seems to be some triggering factor, whether it's a divorce, a separation, or something with the military, his need for getting his help that he's not getting. There's always something that seems to be can be considered a trigger for him going out and doing what he's doing, because again, his goal is to get these messages into the newspaper. And the goal of getting these messages into the newspaper based on Harriet Solve is so that he can get the remedy for what it is that's ailing him in his pursuit of trying to get healthy or well. So we see a couple murders.
Just for him. It's
What's
not
that?
the remedy just for him. It's the remedy for a bunch of people. He's
Right.
looking for it.
Right.
Yeah.
He seems to have a penchant for filing workers' comp claims when it doesn't seem like he's been that injured at either job.
Exactly. He's spending a whole lot of time. Yeah. So how are you getting paid? You're not working. You're claiming disabled. You're claiming bedridden. You're claiming all of these things. Where's any money coming from to make these moves, buy these properties, do the things that he's been doing this whole time?
Cash only
So-
hits.
So on March 15th of 1976, we have our first murder back in California at Kaiser Medical Center in South San Francisco. 26 years old, sexually assaulted, stabbed repeatedly, body found in a shallow grave May 4th of 1976. There's the hospital connection. Each murder's in a different city, moving counterclockwise from Pacifica to Daly City. Police believe the white man with brown hair, probably right-handed and strong. This one was on the murder map for Sandy Betts. Mary Thames, 3/15/1944, and the Dear Mary suicide note on 3/15/1947 also kind of brought to mind this. I don't know why I have that one in there.
I don't know.
I don't either. I must have meant something by it. It's Carol Booth. Oh, it's the March 15th date. It's the March 15th date, you guys. So Mary Thames was murdered on March 15, 1944, and Dear Mary suicide note was left on 3/15 of 1947. So we have a murder on March 15th of 1976. On March
results.
Where are the Ides of March?
Yeah, the Ides of March too. Yeah.
Don't forget, I want to interject. Carol Booth, the word name Booth comes up on Harriet's most recent solve.
Oh, well, I'm hoping to get to that. March 17th of 1976, Idell Friedman at the San Francisco apartment, stabbed to death with an 8-inch knife, raped, lamp cord wrapped around her neck, long brown hair parted in the middle. That is a typical, I think, victimology for the females that we know that the Zodiac and Jack would have chosen. April 1st of 19...
Sexual assault.
What's that?
Assaults, though. Zodiac sexual assaults.
Yeah, usually did.
Zodiac, the known Zodiacs, there weren't sexual assaults. These two women were sexually assaulted.
Correct. So that differentiates. Yes, that differentiates the MO. But I also recognize that the attempt to make it appear as though it was a sexual assault to thwart the police in the MO has been used several times, where they were sexually violated with an object versus an actual rape. April 1st, 1976, Denise Lamp, Saramonte Shopping Center in Daly City. 9:30 p.m. walks to the car at Saramonte Shopping Center, found a half an hour later in her 1964 Mustang, which had no door handles. She was stabbed to death. She was a Broadmoor resident and 19 years old. What I want to mention about this is that one of the earlier murders in 1947 to 49, one of the women was abducted and found in her car, and she was sexually violated with a bottle brush branch from a tree down in the LA area. So there's one instance right there of him taking the person and their car, killing them in their own car, leaving them in their own car, and then violating them sexually to make it look like a sexual perpetrator.
It was something I always wanted to tell you, Nanette, back when you were reporting Jack's or checking out the cotton or the certain area of Minnesota that you were talking about when he was checking the place out, and those two murders occurred. In that time frame, in that era, murders in Minnesota like that were extremely rare. Those happened years apart. and all of a sudden there's like 2 right there where he's at. Nah, it's him.
Right.
You know,
Well,
unless they were
and like
programming
I
other
said,
killers.
two of the initial 4 that were not attributed to the Oakland County Child Killers, is 2 of them have not been solved. So they very well could have been done by Jack, and then the others were just depositing and maybe even just writing letters. So again, to confuse the entire situation. Now, this one is probably not Jack, but I have it in here. June 6th of 1976, the Sewin family, house named Waldegley. They were protected forest in Sewin, Dornick, Solothurn, Switzerland. 13 rounds of shooting with the Winchester rifle, 11 shots hit the head and 2 hit the chest. 1 victim hits 4 times in the head with precision, 4 corpses in the house and 1 wrapped in carpet on the terrace. Elsa and Eugene Segrist Sackinger. Now, it does sound like a mob hit. We've got a professional here. If they're hitting with precision with a rifle, and we know that Jack was in possession of a Winchester rifle, so that's probably why I threw it in here.
Mm-hmm.
On July 16th of 1976, we see that the Department of Industrial Relations is still mailing to Jack on North Highlands, but that does not mean that he has not left at this point. That brings us to the personal ad in San Francisco Chronicle. We did talk a bit about this in the past on August 27th of 1976. It was at the top of the personal ads to boot, and it's Zodiac, your partner is in deep real estate. You're next. The Imperial Wizard can save you. Surrender to him or I'll terminate your case. R.A. We've talked a little bit about that, and we've gone over that in the past, including the solve and Harriet's solve. Let's see.
But Imperial Wizard, isn't that like a Ku Klux Klan term?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And
yes.
Harriet's been talking about
Yes.
this. Who is the name of that person you were talking about?
You got Louis Beam is one of them. Wow. So there's quite a
this
few things
message-
going on there.
This message you actually
Mhm.
anagrammed, you figured was 115 symbols that said President R. Nixon, we received Elizabeth Short, Arthur Allen, 8/7/1962, Marilyn Monroe pictures, 7A, Treasury Department, which Building 7, you guys, is the Treasury Department and the
Yes.
headquarters for the CIA at that time. Zodiac era mail IO documents in order, years worth, yours truly, Jack Terrence at Uxor and wife.
Right back.
So, leading back into and heading back to the Michigan era, we have Jane Allen. Now, I think Jane Allen was actually solved by somebody else, or was committed by somebody else, because they actually solved that crime. We'll find out in the summary, but it was her boyfriend that was last to see her. She was found 4 days later floating in the Miami River near Miamisburg, which is a waterway dump. Could not tell if she had been sexually assaulted. Her hands were tied behind her back using pieces of a t-shirt. Motorcycle gang has been mentioned, just like Colette and Dee in California, and 16 to 17 miles and 24 minutes away from Carol Settlemeyer's house, which is the actual phone book that I found in Jack's belonging and tracked that woman back to South Lake Tahoe, where Jack had just left at approximately 1977. So as Jack's exiting Cotton, Minnesota, this woman is also exiting Southfield, Michigan, and she's moving to South Lake Tahoe. September 5th of 1976, we have Lisa Dickinson, Heather's Farms Park in Walnut Creek. So back in the California area. This girl has never been found, to my knowledge. She was riding a bike from Los Cerros Avenue, Walnut Creek, towards Heather Farms Park. The bike is found leaning against a tree in the park, and the bike riding murders to come in Arizona near parks. We see bikes involved in the Joe Robinson case. We're going to see bikes being mentioned a lot now around these children that are being abducted. This is on the murder map for Betts, and it's the last California murder we're going to see for over a year while Jack is gone. September 11th of 1977 will be the next one in Pleasant Hill, but that one, I think we've also identified the killer of those. We'll see when we get there. Now that there are no more murders in Texas or California until September of 1977, but this is when things pick up in Michigan and Minnesota. October 19th of 1976. This is my first solid information that Jack is actively living in Cotton, Minnesota. He is applying for dynamite. So he's applying for, at the sheriff's department is the top document where he's signing for the request to be able to purchase the dynamite. And then he has the delivery ticket beneath it. And it's indicating that Hibbing Mill, Jack W. Terrence, customer pickup of Viking Explosives and Supply, Inc. Now, let's see. Jack gives an address of Route 1, Box 219A, Cotton, Minnesota. I put in MA. It shouldn't have been MA. 55724. State license number at the time was A as in Apple, H as in Harry, 373. The customer picked it up. The Duluth sheriff signed the application for the dynamite. And figuring that winter ended in March 1977, and this is when they all moved to Texas. We're going to hear a little bit from Dennis about that, but the bomb squad had to be called out in Austin, Texas, eventually to pick up and dispose of the dynamite somewhere around spring of 1977 because it had become unstable. Here's the actual envelopes that were found together. So he is indicating that there was a Remington Fieldmaster Model 572 with a serial number of RD35. I'm not sure what type of a gun this is. Does anybody have a clue?
I'd have to look it up. I don't know.
Yeah. And then explosive papers, which we see written in a couple ways, which I found to be interesting because this cursive E in explosive was extremely consistent with one of the letters that were written in the Sherry Jo Bates crime. Oh, and look at that A, you guys. This is that high back A that I say we see in so many of the Zodiac documents where it doesn't have the overhang, but it just has that high back like a chair that's sitting there. So it's interesting to see these and note these because as we've indicated, this is a heavy habit for Jack to do, but clearly he doesn't always place that overhang on there. And he thus is just kind of coming short of doing the overhang and just doing the backside. But the memory movement and the way this letter is formed is consistent with what we've been looking at in the Zodiac.
And it's fanciful.
It's fanciful. This is another one of Jack's cars. I have not been able to identify what type of vehicle this is. I would love to know because, of course, I would like. Buick. Oh, because a Buick is one of the cited vehicles in the Michigan. Yes, in the Michigan cases. So it's shown in the snow, which will be either Minnesota or Michigan, obviously, during this time, because that's when Dennis indicates that they were there through the cold winter. I wanted to check to verify the taillight assembly with the marks left in the snowbank because there was a report of marks by the taillights being left in a snowbank in one of the drop-offs of the murders in the Michigan area. Now, I did some... What's that?
There's documents on that in the FOIA files, and it turned out to be an intermediate GM car. I can't remember if they said Pontiac or Buick. I'd have to get back to you on that, but they definitely got an imprint out of the snow on that deal. And it definitely ties to one particular car, and it was a GM intermediate, not as big as that Buick there. It's the one it's more like a Chevelle was back then, or a GTO or such.
And we also saw the key ring that was a GMAC key ring from Southfield, Michigan, that was in Jack's possessions as well. Now, I did run this through a private investigator that I've worked with on cases for handwriting, and I employed him in some of these things with the Zodiac case. His name is Don Traco. He's with Gumshoe Detectives, and he reports that they were unable to get a hit on a Carol Settlemeyer anywhere. Like, this is like finding Lisa Marie Self. You couldn't find her. He couldn't find her anywhere by this name. But he said that, let alone in Portola, which is where I eventually found her, he searched the P.O. Box 383 in Portola and got one Carol with a current contact info of Carol Ann Sharney, P.O. Box 1267, Angels Camp, California, 95222-1267. But also showing an address of 1019 Madden Lane in Roseville, California, Ground Ball Way in Citrus Heights. These are all areas that Jack has frequented. Her date of birth, a landline number, a cell phone number, another landline number. When he ran her social security number, it did not return to Settlemeyer. So this is the only Carol that used that P.O. box at least for several years, and it looks like she was using it in the late 1990s because this is how the contact was made with the U.S. Marshals to locate Carol in 1993 when her father had died. So I'm thinking it must be the same one, and this last name, she's changed her name or she's gotten married. Something has occurred. But the fact that he can't actually even pull a report on her based on her previous name is what boggles me. That brings us into the Jill Robinson case. So on December 22nd of 1976, Jill Robinson went missing. She was 12 years old. She was in Royal Oaks, Michigan, found Sunday, December 26, 1976, on the side of I-75 near Big Beaver Road in Troy, Michigan. She's placed inside of the police station in the snow, which means she's posed. She's found on Route I-75 just north of 16 Mile Road in Troy, Michigan. The top of her head was blown off with a 12-gauge shotgun. She had been cleaned and she had been cleaned and bathed as well. There were no signs of a sexual assault. Jill's bike was found behind the Valenti and Lieberman offices on North Main Street in Royal Oaks. September 5th of 1976, Lisa Dickinson, where her bike was left behind in Dickinson, Texas murders. So it's quite like some of the other victims where, again, this bicycle's involved. I just got distracted by my 5-minute time limit. Dickinson, Texas murders and Arizona murders to come where bikes go missing and are never found. And then the entire distance from Southfield, Michigan and Carol Settlemeyer's residence is approximately 11 miles and 17 minutes. So again, she is wrapped up in the dead center. We had a blue and green plaid jacket, denim blue backpack, blue jeans, and a blue knit cap.
Keep in mind the Big Beaver Road thing for when we get to the Ramsey murder. We'll talk about that.
Right. I know about the beaver hairs and the things of that nature that seem to be a cross connection. So let's see. Carol had 17 miles from Southfield, Michigan, and Carol Settlemeyer's home. Carol had numbers in her phone book for an unordinary amount of dog pounds, police stations, and bars. Police believed animals may have been what lured the children away. And let's see. Oh, that gets you guys. We were so close. We were 2 slides from the secret witness letter.
Show us the slides, though, real quick.
Yeah.
Well, here's that letter. And I actually just recently, as I was going back through this, I found the hit of one cursive written letter O with a loop in the center. And you can see it enlarged right here. It is the secret witness document. The rest of the O's are all posed like teardrops. But if we go back through and we look at what the Zodiac did, he had exactly same shape, same lean, same size, same loop. And also the teardrops were another one of the Zodiac's handwriting personas. So teardrops and looped O's. I found extremely interesting. But I want to read yours. I want to read yours real quick here. It says, this is from Terry. Greetings to you all. Technically, the secret witness document is filed as a Jill Robinson, the second child victim document. However, and because of its pivotal importance and because the OCC case was, of course, presented to the public as a whole item, it greatly warrants repeated review. Zodiac Jack documents carry a lot of messages, and this same document is something that I've made several different annotated copies of because of the simple fact that it's too damn busy to be covered by only one angle. Or I'm sorry, by one page. There is no question whatsoever that Jack rotated most of the letter ends slightly clockwise in order to double and serve as the Zodiac killer hints. And yes, he has also slipped in his JT initials as well as his bisected letter B hints that clearly double as the number 13. The crop mark style of the letter K's also serve as a number 11 because, of course, the letter K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. In the plain text word Lincoln, notice how he treated the second letter L to the take on a V shape. Again, the letter V is the 22nd letter of the alphabet. King, 11, 13, and 22 are among the most redundant of John Walker Terrence Jr. Zodiac Jack hints. Sadly, the nasty numbers at 1122 King Road on 111322 and the hard aerial view evidence that accompanies it bolsters this secret witness document and several other documents before and afterwards. In fact, he bolstered practically every document he ever made via several different correlated methods. Terry, P.S. The details really jump out at you when you enlarge this highly organized murder document.
Exactly.
All right, we got 2 minutes. Who has some
Harriet
takes on
will
this?
knock it out of the park with her solve. I'm telling you, it's fabulous.
Oh,
Boy,
yeah.
Oh,
Can we go back to SLA and Petty Hearst again and mind control?
Absolutely. We got 2 minutes.
Okay, so the guy that taught, his name was Donald DeFreeze, SynQ, the leader of the SLA. Anyway, he was taught by Colton Westbrook, who's a professor at Berkeley, but he's also a mind control doctor at Vacaville. And they were running all these different programs there. And actually, SynQ was in charge of one of the programs. And so then when he got out, he started the Symbionese Liberation Army. And one of his goals, he says, was I crave the power Charlie Manson had, declared Sin Q. That's kind of eerie. Because we were just talking about the different dates and correlations, and then mind control and Manson, and then, you know, Hearst and SLA. Just too many coincidences.
Far too many coincidences. So is there anything else anybody would like to add? We've got about 40 seconds here. I just want, before I let anybody go, I want you all to have a wonderful weekend, and we will be back with that secret witness document and the solve from Harriet Suchet this following Friday. I think it was going to be very interesting for everybody to see and to read.
And never underestimate the power of a schnook. Sorry, Harriet.
Well, if Cathy Broad is listening, I just want to say real quick, if Cathy Broad is listening, I understand she has a WordPress site. She should be checking out my blog too, because I tried to put about the secret witness letter there. So, you know, maybe hopefully she'll join us, you know.
We're at time, guys.
Link me your blog, please.
We're at time, Terry B.
Link
Peace, you guys. Blog. Thank you for being here. You are all awesome. I will talk to you next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,